Hi, so I want to do this little series. I don't know how many parts it's going to be yet, but talking about going to college in New York City because it is a really different college experience, and I haven't seen anyone do a video specifically on the college that I went to. So this is for everybody who is interested in Eugene Lang College. I will say it's a little outdated in some ways because I graduated from Eugene Lang College in 2015 and I started in 2010. So like some things have changed, but some other stuff is pretty much the same, I think pretty consistent for going to college in New York City. This idea kind of came up because this photo popped up on my Facebook and I realized it had been, I don't want to age myself, but 13 years since my mom had dropped me off at college. So that was pretty crazy to realize. I've been kind of sitting and thinking about making this series for a while. So there's no time like the present. Let's jump into it. So number one, why did I choose Eugene Lang College, the new school for liberal arts? So probably one of the biggest reasons was my brother went to NYU and I didn't want to go to NYU because I didn't want to do everything exactly like my older brother. But also I wanted to go to a school that was a bit smaller. I felt like NYU was still a huge institution. I knew that I wanted to be in New York City. When I was in high school, I had gone on college tours. I'd visited, schools ranging from Switzerland. My mom really wanted me to consider a hotel management school in Switzerland because I don't know why my parents really wanted me to be a chef. And I guess we'll talk about that in a later video. My parents really wanted me to be a chef and that was my dream when I was 10, but then I was like, I'm 17, I don't want to do that anymore. I ended up working in kitchens anyway later in life. I knew I wanted to be in New York. My mom was like, maybe you should consider Barnard or Columbia, Ivy League schools, and I did look at them. I felt like my grades weren't gonna be good enough, and they just felt really like old institutions. I knew I wanted to be downtown, I wanted to be in the Village, where the artists were. I had this very romantic idea about living in New York City because I had interned in the city for a few summers in high school. I came, upon Parsons at first, but I was like, I wouldn't consider myself a visual artist or a designer. But I really felt like I wanted to go to a liberal arts college. I didn't know what I wanted to study yet, but I knew that that would give me a good foundation to be very well-rounded. So I did my research and I settled on the new school. I took a tour of the school, I think summer before my senior year, and I was like, this is it. This is the only school that I want to go to. I ended up applying early decision, so I think the cutoff was probably November. I got a new guidance counselor that year who just so happened to be good friends with the admissions counselor at Lang, so it was kind of, I don't know, I didn't really doubt that I was gonna get in at all. So I applied. I found out in December that I got into college of my senior year, so second semester I was coasting. So my first semester at college, my mom drops me off and I immediately make friends with a lot of people on my floor. I stayed at the Stuyvesant dorms, which are predominantly a freshman dorm. Somehow, I have no idea how, but I got put on the honors floor. Apparently we were the nerds of the dorms because not every floor, but a lot of the floors had themes or groups. So I think the 5th floor was the jazz floor, so a lot of students, freshmen from the jazz school, were put on the 5th floor, and ours just happened to be the honors floor. I did not apply for that. separately. I have no idea how they made that decision. I think I decided to randomly get paired, and I got paired with like 2 really cool girls, and then my suite mate Ariel is still like one of my really good friends, like probably one of my best friends. So staying in the dorm was definitely a really good idea my freshman year. I don't regret that decision at all. A lot of the people that I met in the dorms are literally my best friends even now. So first semester, I was taking like 14 credits, which I think is like the lowest amount of credits you could do, just because I knew that I needed time to like get adjusted to moving to the city, and it was a huge change. Like, I think college and high school, like in high school, I was constantly doing clubs. I had a group of friends. I was in band, and, you know, I just did tons and tons of things to fill my time with. I think high school was also a lot more structured, but once I got into college, like nobody had classes at the same time. You know, sometimes you wouldn't have class until like 6 or 7 p.m. and then you'd have to like spend your whole day doing something. And that was a huge shock to my system, because some days I would have class at like 9 or 8 a.m. and then other days I wouldn't have my first class till like 2 p.m. And so I would like sleep in, or I just like didn't have a good routine for myself. Also, one of my really close teachers from high school actually very tragically passed away. Like he was in a car accident, and that just like really affected me my first semester. Like I was super depressed. But otherwise, like I really tried to go out a lot, you know, have fun with my new friends. Like we did the simplest things. Like we literally just all played music and danced around in the dorm room. I remember like a few of my friends and we decided to wait all night to go see Katy Perry playing at Good Morning America. I definitely was introduced to Trader Joe's at that time. I am a Trader Joe's girl. What's nice about the Stuyvesant dorms, I don't know. So they're currently under construction, and I don't know what it's gonna look like when they finish, but a lot of the new school dorms are actually like apartment style. So you have a full kitchen, well, not a full kitchen, like you have a stove and a microwave and a sink and a fridge. We actually were allowed to bring, like, I had a toaster oven, and like a crock pot and a rice cooker. Like there weren't a lot of things that we weren't allowed to bring in terms of like appliances. I think the only thing was that you couldn't have like open flames, so you couldn't have candles or like incense burning, which, yeah, for obvious reasons. So my dorm was dry, but not all of the dorms at the new school are technically dry dorms. And she was staying at Cary Hall, which is like the newer dorm. It was built like my sophomore, junior year of college, and I'd already moved out of the dorms by that point. But that dorm wasn't a dry dorm, and I feel like some of the other dorms, like especially the ones for the upperclassmen, are also not dry dorms. My dorm was a predominantly underclassmen and freshman dorm, although we did have a few RAs who were upperclassmen, and they get to stay for free in exchange for being an RA. Our floor was actually pretty close. And it was like very mixed amongst the schools. So there were probably only 3 Lang kids on my floor, and then the rest were mostly Parsons. Oh, I think there were like a few jazz school students. So like they definitely mix up the people in the dorms. Even though living in a dorm was really miserable at times, like the bathroom was always dirty. I don't know why. I literally clean the bathroom every week. I highly recommend staying in the dorms for the first year, because the way the new school is culturally, like people don't really hang out on campus like a traditional college. When you go to college in New York City, I think especially at the new school, everyone's pretty much like on your own. You're considered an adult. Like there aren't people, other than like getting caught drinking in the dorms, no one's really gonna be like babysitting you, making sure you're eating, making sure you're doing well. Like, everyone is pretty much like an adult, and they treat class like going to work. And a lot of people also do have jobs or start internships like right away. I remember, a lot of people on my floor were interviewing and like getting jobs at Barnes & Noble, Starbucks, like entry-level jobs, Warby Parker, or starting to get internships at like Condé Nast, for like big designers, Michael Kors, you name it. You're in New York City, you should take advantage of the fact that you're in New York City. Classes, for me, the class load was definitely different. I think the way that classes were run were really different. I wasn't used to such small classes, so most of the classes, unless they're a lecture, which are about 200 students tops, because there aren't really huge lecture halls, but they definitely take to the Socratic method where you're in small classes and you're discussing, and the professor's gonna like lead the discussions for the readings that you were meant to do. But it is like a very independent, like you don't take a lot of tests. You're graded mostly on participation in class or your writing or your projects. So I remember freshman year, you're required a few classes. I loved both of my seminars. My first semester was a food writing class, and then all the classes are really interesting. And my second semester was a memoir writing class, and I was exposed to a lot of really interesting writers I'd never heard about, thinking about writing in a way that I'd never thought about. In high school, I felt like we didn't have a lot of discussions about reading. It was an interpretation. It was more like you were being spoon-fed the answers of like what exactly this is. What is the metaphor? What does it mean? And everyone kind of filled in the blanks about like what it meant. At Lang, you're definitely encouraged to like come up with your own answers, come up with your own opinions. Like, you're really encouraged to think outside the box, to incorporate a lot of the things that you're learning into your interpretations. Like thinking about morality and philosophy. It was really, I think it was incredibly difficult for me to get out of the headspace of like, there's no right answer, like what's going on, and be brave enough to start having my own opinions about things. And the classes, like I said, are very small. I think tops for the classes at Lang, it's probably 14 students. So if you're not participating, it's really obvious. I loved a lot of my classmates. I made a lot of good friends, but obviously it's college. There are definitely people who were like there to just kind of skim by and didn't want to participate, or you could tell they were taking the class because they had to for like the credits or for their major or their minor or something. Some of my favorite classes were the natural history of New York City. I learned a lot about and this was like a required class, like a seminar class for our freshman year. It was really cool. We read about like the natural history of Manhattan, New York City. We learned about like the native plants, urban planning, even like gentrification. I also love this class. This professor, Robert Sember, like he was the one who introduced me to ballroom culture. And actually one of my classmates from that class, Ricky Turner, I'll put it here, wrote this amazing book on ballroom. And I also took improv classes, and I got introduced to improv for the first time. I've mentioned that I'm a DJ, and one of my last videos was about DJing. I took a DJ class at Lang, and they actually expanded it to like an entire hip hop curriculum where you learn and you create hip hop music. So in terms of the student body of Lang, I think it's pretty broad, but I think it doesn't attract a lot of people also because like it's a really small school. I think in total there's maybe like 800 students in the whole college or something, maybe like 1,200. It's a very small school, but I think it's also very, very liberal and like socialist leaning, and that's very attractive to like a certain kind of person. There's also just like a lot of like we would say like NYU rejects of people who didn't get into NYU and got into Lang, and they still wanted to go to school in New York City, so they ended up going to the new school. There's a lot of like really wealthy kids because it's a very expensive private school, but also a lot of kids who are on scholarship who are studying like social justice and are like very passionate about like creating social change. And that's actually like one of the themes of the essays that you have to write for your application is like what kind of social impact do you want to make on the world. Yeah, and there's like no Greek life at all. Like I think still to this day have never been to a sorority or a frat party. It's such a foreign concept to me. Like I don't know what rushing is. I don't know. I think that does not exist at all at the new school. There's a pretty wide age range at Eugene Lang and the new school in general too. Like my freshman year, I was taking classes with people who were like in their late 20s, early 30s, who had come back to Eugene Lang to like finish their bachelor's degree or had done military service and were like coming back later to finish college. Also, a lot of the classes that I was able to take later on, like as an upperclassman, were at the new school for public engagement, which is like a continuing ed program for adults. So it's like non-degree, but I could still get credit for it for my bachelor's. But there were like entrepreneur classes and like media classes, and they were just continuing ed. So I was taking it with like a lot older professionals who had businesses, like fully grown up people and not just like little me, 19 years old. I think the first semester freshman year is probably the hardest semester for everybody. Everyone's going through a lot of change. Everyone gets sick. Like everyone's bringing their germs from wherever, and like the germs in New York City as well. And everyone in the dorm got really sick. My roommate actually ended up getting mono second semester, and we didn't know till she went back to Norway. And she was like, hey guys, I had mono the whole time. That's why I was so tired. And we're all like, what the frick? But everyone's gonna get sick, so definitely stock up on your emergency freshman year. But also, emotionally, it's really hard. People are moving away from their families for the first time. You're in a huge new city. It's really overwhelming. And a lot of people ended up leaving. Like some people, I remember I made a friend and we would hang out like every single day. And by the like October or November, she was like, this was not the school that I wanted. I'm gonna transfer to NYU, and that's what she did. She ended up transferring out to NYU, and I probably lost like half of the friends that I made first semester freshman year because they either went home or they transferred to another school. And like that's just something that happens a lot in New York. I feel like it's probably the same with NYU as well, or FIT. So one thing that I also really loved about going to Lang was that I was also allowed to take classes at a lot of other schools under the new school umbrella. So I actually did take a photography class and a sound design class, and I think an art history class at Parsons. So I ended up becoming a music major. Like my degree literally says that I studied music. Let me pull it out for you. Guys, my degree is literally still in the envelope that I got it from. It's been almost 10 years. I should maybe frame this. Yeah, and I literally got a bachelor's in contemporary music. That is so funny. That was definitely not what I anticipated at all. I actually thought I was gonna go in and end up being a theater major. I found the new school like a little bit too experimental for me. I took a few acting classes and I was like, this is not for me. I thought maybe I would major in history at some point because I had a really great professor. Somehow, I think it was after I took the DJing class, I ended up taking a lot of other music classes, and it was just like the easiest it was the easiest major for me to do because I had already done so many of the prerequisites, and I was like, well, that was easy. I guess I'll just finish as a music major. I think it turned out well because I'm still doing music. I'm, you know, a DJ, and that definitely was because I was exposed to it at the new school. Like if I hadn't taken that class, I definitely wouldn't still be DJing, or I would have never started DJing. I love that I was also allowed to use a lot of the school's resources. At the new school, their library is really small, so we have access to BOPST, which is NYU's library. We also had access to a lot of labs, computer labs for music majors. I think anybody actually, we were allowed to use, there was like a full-on recording studio. There were theaters where you could like rent space out and like screen films. I also did a film class during one summer and learned that you could rent out film equipment, and I think it was free. Like, as long as you returned it on time, we were allowed to use the school computers to make music. They had like all of the latest softwares like Ableton, Logic Pro, Pro Tools. There was like a huge mixing board that we could practice on. There were practice rooms. There were also like clubs that you could join as well. I was in the improv club. It was a very small club. I think the clubs really depend on like you are supposed to have like a faculty advisor for your club, but I really think that it's very student driven, and if your leadership in your club isn't very good, your club's gonna fall apart, like whatever. But I think you do get like a little bit of a budget, and you get a classroom where you guys get to meet. And let's talk meal plan. So when I was in school, I think we were required to have like a couple $1,000s of meal plan freshman year, and only if you were living in the dorms. So I remember having a meal plan, and I would just buy like breakfast with it. Otherwise, I was mostly cooking for myself because I like to cook. And like I said, there was a full kitchen in my dorms, but there were like a lot of meal options. Cary Hall has like a really amazing food court, like it's fancy, it's nice. But they had like a sushi bar, they had like hot food, they had like a coffee bar with like fancy drinks in it. It was really nice. And then you can just like use your student ID and it like scans, and then it'll take the money out of your account. At Lang, there was also like a small cafe that they had like hot breakfast, like oatmeal, like scrambled eggs. And then at lunchtime when I went, I don't know if it's still the case, but it would turn into a sushi bar also. They had like cookies and cakes and like small snacks, fresh fruit, and also like beverage fridge. At 13th Street, there's also like a little cafe that had hot food. It was like a hot food bar. I think they had like specials every day, and it would change. It was open from like maybe 7:30 till 6 p.m. But you're in New York City, like there's a Chipotle around the corner from school. There's a coffee shop. If you're living in the dorms, like St. Mark's Place is right down the street. Like you're not gonna be eating at school all that much unless you're like really trying to use up your food money. And I remember like at the end of the first 2 semesters, because I think the money didn't roll over, I would just end up buying like a ton of granola bars and things and like giving them to unhoused people on the street, who like you would start making friends with because you would just say hi to them every day and you like hang out with them. I feel like that's good for now. I think if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. I don't know if I'm the best resource. I just wanted to like make a little video about New York City and like going to school in New York City, because I personally really loved it. I don't regret it at all, even 13 years later. It was really formative. It was an incredible experience, and I think it just makes you grow up a lot faster because you're not in this like insulated place outside of a big city. You're just like thrown into the mix of being a young professional. Or let me know what you guys want to hear more about, because you know, I got stories for days. I think in the next parts I'll talk more about like doing internships and working while you're in school, like making friends, especially while you're living in the dorms, like what partying and fun stuff was like back in the day. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and let me know what else you want to see. Till next time, bye.